Hey, Maggie.
How are
Oh,
you?
7 people in the waiting room. Admit, 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 admit,
So many people.
admit.
Hello.
Ari, nice to see your face.
Hey, Tammy.
Tammy, wow.
Hello.
Everyone, we'll just give a minute or two for folks to join. Also, if it's okay or you don't mind, I linked to a stickies board that since there's a bigger group of people today, it will help to get input from everyone. And sorry you have to sign up. I didn't know of a better quick solution to that. Yeah, I feel the stickies maybe we'll use the stickies to answer a couple group questions. Hi, Carolina. The chat, can be a free for all if you want. Okay, so share my screen. Can everyone see the stickies board on my screen? Just give me like a nod or something. First of all, welcome everyone. Very exciting to see so many people here excited about what is a concept that we are still working on, trying to flesh out, or I guess just kind of coming up with recently. So it seems like some people are interested. So we'll try to figure it out together. If you are on the stickies board, I thought we could get started by just answering a simple question. What kind of brought you here today? Yeah, it's, I think, yeah, simple question. Like you double click, you can add a sticky by double clicking. And I'm gonna make this board incognito for now. Oh, cool. It's an incognito. So you can't see each other's answers until
Could you
give
put
each
the link
other a few
in the
couple
chat again,
minutes
please?
to see where everyone's coming from, because I think we have a pretty, probably hopefully a diverse group of perspectives here.
Thanks, Jeff.
That may only be incognito for you. Maybe.
Yeah, it's not incognito for me.
I can see other people's.
Yeah, same.
Are there like two boards? Because I see the one that's what brings you here today. And yours says
Yes, I see yours is what part of universal, and
yeah.
I'm on what brings you here today. So I
Yeah.
think we have two boards.
Yeah, so I'm just writing my what brings me here on the wrong board. I'll try to, can I move it to the other board? Copy and paste, I wonder.
Copy and paste, yeah.
Okay. I'm also, I got to get set up. I'm not in my proper office, so I'm trying to get my two monitors working together. So I'm just going to be over here trying to.
The engagement that we're having today gives me goosebumps. This is the screen with all the stickies. It's just glorious.
Wow, I just realized that I was not connected to my headphones. So I was just talking to the void, but everyone was just
Talking to
completely
yourself.
silent for like the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, that explains a few things.
Like, what is talking to the void?
It's so rude, Jeff, just talking over the top of everyone.
I'm sorry.
So the things you've missed while you've been away,
Yes, thank you. Please someone
You-
catch me up.
you've only incognitoed one of the boards. I don't know if that was your intention. There was quite a lot of confusion about around which board we were supposed to be writing on. And most people, I think, have found their way to the correct board, but you've only made incognito the other board, which is probably fine. But
This one's a little lower.
that's what you missed.
Thanks, Ben. I'm just going to read some of these out loud. WordPress designer developer, trying to learn how to prepare for the Gutenberg future. Want to make sure sites themes I'm developing now will be as future-proof as possible. Curious about how .org community is approaching theme building now that FSC is here or on the horizon. Finally shifted to start developing themes based on Gutenberg, mostly open source ones. Want to learn more about the concept of universal themes, about people's thoughts about how to use features in 5.8. Curious to hear what the limits are for universal themes and if those limits lead to more complexity. Plugin developer, also interested in UX. 2020 call for code edtech app school list relies on user-friendly mobile experience. Whoa. Very nice. Just sounds like some people here coming from kind of design UX side, some people interested in the future now that FSC is on the horizon. What's the definition of universal theme? Great question. Okay, now maybe the incognito board. This question, I'll spend a few minutes on. Also, what part of universal themes are you most curious about or want clarity about? So if you alluded to it in your first answer, maybe there's something specific that you are wondering about or something specific that you think will be challenging given the differences in customization contexts. So for people that have just joined, we are in a stickies board. Oh, thanks, Ben. Answering this question together. What part of universal themes are you most curious about or want more clarity about?
I'm sorry to be the squeaky wheel. I'm so go back into the universal, the non-universal one to answer the second question. Is that what we're supposed to do? Yeah.
Sorry, could you Ask it again. No, no worries. What's
Am
the
I meant
question?
to be answering the question in the incognito one or the other one?
In the incognito one.
Gotcha.
You can see it, right? Yeah, you should be able to.
And the second question is, can you ask it again?
Sure. What part of the universal theme concept are you most interested in, curious about, or confused about? And basically, is there something specific about universal themes that you want more clarity on? Oh, I should also mention this is being recorded. This is so we can share it afterwards for folks who can catch up async. So that's not okay. Let me feel free to drop or let me know. So while folks are wrapping up some thoughts there, I'm going to disable incognito mode. Take it all in for a second. I'm just gonna move some of these around, maybe some that might seem related to each other.
I think the reason for the incognito mode, Tom, is so that people don't influence each other when they're writing it, because it's very easy to just go, oh yeah, that's what I think as well, and then you sort of don't have your own thoughts. So I guess that maybe was what Jeff was thinking, that if you have
It's helpful to see the same question asked 3 times in 3 different ways.
that's true, yeah.
Does anyone want to or feel like they can talk about what they wrote or curious about?
I'm always feel like I can talk about what I wrote.
Sure.
I don't mind. Well, so I wrote there, I'm not shy, my name's Meg. I wrote there that I'm working to identify the right pathway for my project, which bridges from a traditional theme to an FSE block theme, but in a cost-effective and future-proof way. So to me, timing is everything, and I really want to nail it, right? I don't want to jump in too soon because that wouldn't make sense, but I don't want to be too late and then playing catch up. So I made, I believe, that mistake with Gutenberg originally, right? So I feel like I was sort of like the last person to identify that I needed to like all of a sudden, I mean, I get it, but I didn't really start learning JavaScript deeply until I was told to learn JavaScript deeply. It was always the thing I wanted to avoid, to be honest. So I feel like I came late to the party, and I don't want to do that again, but I also don't want to be too far out in front so that I am consistently redoing and reworking. Does that make sense? So for me, it's identifying timing.
So kind of like, oh, am I muted?
We hear you.
Kind of like identifying the timing of when is right to start to adopt parts of the full site editing experience into your theme.
Sure.
Like, is it too soon?
Yeah, you know, I built a theme that creates an experience pathway that very much feels full site editing, but and I did that starting in, I guess I started building it in like 2019, and I've been refining it since. And I've gotten myself into a place where I can rely on Gutenberg for everything but the header and the footer. And that comes from the customizer, but underneath it all, it's a traditional PHP theme. So when do I say, okay, I'm ready to walk away from that and go with a block theme? I don't want to throw that work in the garbage can, but I also don't want to jump out too soon before I can affect all parts of my site and sites and projects, which are diverse in nature, and all rely on WooCommerce. So I sell things always. So yeah, so that's a big consideration for me. And I in my current working flow, I have this really great Gutenberg, and it's not a Gutenberg block theme, but it relies on Gutenberg for everything except WooCommerce, right? So you can't create your products with the block editor unless I'm mistaken. I don't know. Unless I don't know something that there is that I haven't used yet. But that's a little bothersome, because once you get into the luxury of using blocks, you really want to be able to use them everywhere, don't you?
I think someone's typing in the stickies asking what's the universal theme, and I don't want us all like not being on the same page as to what we're talking about early on. And I know we need to like define that. That's kind of what we're doing, but I don't want to go too far along without like saying, what is it we're talking about when we're saying, what is a universal theme? I have my own, ideas and opinions on it, but I don't want to, where do we go from there? What's the?
I'm like even hesitant to just write anything down because it feels like I'm just trying to answer this, but
I guess that's what I was digging at a little bit with my question was, I'm torn as to how much should be provided by.
Oh, quick, sorry, Tammy, which one? Where can I find?
So mine was, why should we have a theme? Isn't it time to stop having themes and take full advantage of the tools? And I guess I'm going backwards and forwards at the moment between like no themes and like themes just with styling, and we're using the wrong word, because the word themes is going to mean something different now. And I think that's one of the problems. We're still using a word for something that is going to be something different. I know we're putting universal in front of it now, but it's still going to be different. So I think defining it is really, really important, because you say the word theme and there's a memory of something, and there's a kind of knowledge. And the other part of that is, I think there's a lot of weight and tools that can be done within the editor itself that the theme doesn't have to do anymore, even more so for universal. So we're talking about not necessarily having all of the universal stuff in the theme even, there may be stuff in the editor that gets activated just by it being universal. I'm doing this a lot with hand gestures. The themes, I would actually counter, so in chat, because you can't see chat if you're watching this back on video, and I think it's really important to surface the chat as well. Tom saying themes have always been meant for only styling. I would say yes, they have always been meant for styling, but that's not been the case. Themes have always ended up being more like plugins, and that's where the problem is. So I see this as an opportunity that themes can go back to that. So I would say universal themes shouldn't be trying to bring functionality to get around the fact that they've got to have a fallback. The fallback hopefully would be within the system and they would just activate it. And that's a lot of words from me.
Well, something you said, Tammy, really brought to mind another conversation I'm having separately outside of the WordPress community. It's all interrelated in my mind. It's that the experience of data doesn't have to be indicated by the data itself if we're clever about how we separate those concerns. One of the things that I'm struggling with in terms of imagining what a full site editing experience truly WYSIWYG looks like in a WordPress world, as opposed to the more simple platforms like Wix and other things. I won't use other specific terms, but when you're dealing with a more encapsulated set of functionality, it's easier to imagine these sorts of all-encompassing experiences. But for instance, if you're developing for a specific business use case, there may be quite a lot of underlying information that needs to be gathered, which has nothing to do with what does the site look like ultimately, right? And so how does one present those questions for answer in a modern and intuitive way within an experience that's meant to be WYSIWYG, right? So for it, let me give you a specific example, so I'm not talking in arbitrary space. I develop software for boat captains, right? They have a schedule, right? So I go out at 8, I go out at 10, I go out at 12. None of that has anything to do with what the site looks like, right? So how do I present a WYSIWYG experience for the captain to set that up in a way that makes sense? It's sort of, it's background information in a way that he doesn't juggle with except from year to year. So these are the questions that I'm thinking about, all of that plugin space, plugin settings, where some of them get really, really complex. Mine, I try to keep as a very niche use case, so there's as few settings as possible, but either way, there are some settings. So that's sort of the...
I think I want to bring a lot of light to the fact that right now, specifically with WordPress 5.8, we're going to have a lot of new tools to use. We're not going to have the full site editor within Core. And I think to really bring back the idea of what are universal themes, I think to me, what can we do with Core without the plugin, leveraging all of these new and important tools that allow us to bridge that gap between what Gutenberg has in the full site editing experience and what it has had using the classic experience, but still using all of this new technology, all these new tools, these new ways of building themes that we can do today, that we can use to bridge that gap, that we're moving into the full site editor experience. I think the FSE is coming. There's no doubt that that is going to be the premier tool set of users to use their, to build their, modify, customize their site for years to come. But we're not quite ready to use it. But there's so many other interesting things we can use. And so like what is that gray area between classic and FSC block-based themes that we can work on today? And I think that's kind of the crux of the matter, I think.
Part of that is also the user doesn't care of what they're using, right? Or they shouldn't care. They should
Right,
be able
right.
to just
But we care
get
how
the
we build it.
theme. Oh, okay.
You know?
They should be able to just get the theme, and they should be able to just activate it on their WordPress. They don't know what version their WordPress is,
Right.
and they shouldn't have, they shouldn't have to know what version their WordPress is. They shouldn't have to know about JSONs. They shouldn't have to know about BERTs, whatever we want to call it. They shouldn't have to know about anything or files or technology. I think we have to be careful, though, that we're not putting it in the theme. It's and we collectively using the term, because that has been the mistake in the past. It's activating it from the theme is different to having it in the theme. Those are different concepts. The theme bringing it alive and activating it is very different to the theme having it inside. And I think that's a fine point here with universal themes, to maybe not go the route of some of the past theming.
Yes, of course, both the site editor and the template editing mode, they're not theme parts. Teams use them. Editors use them. What the theme does is, of course, set the defaults for the blocks, colors, typography, and also the placement, the original placement. Maybe not the placement that the user is actually going to have on their live site when it's finished. So the question is, how do we get from a PHP-based theme with PHP templates that doesn't use block, it uses regular HTML that we have added, to actually use block styles? How do we use Theme JSON in 5.8? Because the benefit of Theme JSON is still that you get so much CSS for free, you can reduce over half of it if you're using block styles.
Even more. With on our experience, it's like you can reduce like 70% of the CSS of your theme using Theme JSON.
And that, I think, kind of touches a little bit on like, should we even have themes? And I know that encompasses such a broad thing, but there will always be themes, I think, because the full site editor won't always encompass everything that can be done within a browser. So I think there's always a place for things outside of what theme.json can do.
I think it depends on your definition of the word themes. I think
Sure.
it
yeah.
really requires, again, we're using the word to
Mhm.
this thing we've always used it before, and it's evolving. And I think we have to redefine it. And just putting universal doesn't redefine it. It kind of does, but kind of doesn't. Really, it will be styles. It will be, you will change it, and styles. It's like clothing. Right. That's how easy it will be. It won't affect, at the moment, I might as well be changing body parts if I want to change a theme, because that's how dramatic it can be, changing a theme. It will be as easy as changing clothing. It's going to be.
I don't want to portray the image of universal themes as being the destination. I don't think that when we talk about building universal themes, at least in smaller groups in which I've used that word, I don't think that that's the idea, is that building them that way is how we expect to ultimately be building themes for the full site editor and for WordPress in 3 years. It's just this gray area between now, universal, I don't think is any magic bullet as far as that goes. If that helps, I don't know.
I like to think about the universal themes as a bridge. The name universal may convey like they're gonna be all-encompassing, but it's not that way. When we say universal, like the name is related more like it's gonna work in the transition between one way of building and using themes and the new one. And that's why
transition is better. Transitional training wheel themes is a better frame of mind. Transitional themes, as Alan just said in the chat, it is a better kind of
initially
framing.
Like the word was more like hybrid themes, and that went to universal. And it's, well, naming can be like really tricky, and that could be a discussion, and we could spend like 3 days talking about that. But just so that people who are not as familiar with the term know why we use this term and what we try to convey. And as Jason said, this is not meant to be like the way themes are going to be built in 3 years, but the way we can build themes that are leveraging all these new tools that we're going to get on 5.8 and in the future as soon as possible, and get them to the users as soon as possible too.
The naming is definitely, yeah, it seems to be like maybe it's even part of why so many people join it. It's like, oh, it's not a silver bullet, you know, it's not going to solve everyone's problems of like, but I mean, we're trying to identify what those problems are, but right, I definitely think the naming is one side of it. I do think it might be worth focusing or talking a little bit about what exactly are those tools. Like, okay, set the name aside for a second. What are those tools and areas that we want this concept to address, and what is available in 5.8 that we can, because we're kind of glossing over it, like, oh, theme JSON to render most of the theme style opinions, block templates or PHP based templates that render blocks mostly, instead of baking the logic into the PHP templates. Like these concepts, I feel if we get some clarity around, at least it's the substance of what exactly, like the name's not important, is what we're, the territory that we're wanting to explore here. And it's, yeah, I agree that the name kind of can be distracting from the tools. So maybe I think there's some kind of questions in this side of things, like what are those actual tools, like kind of on the right side here, that maybe we can focus on for a little bit.
If a theme needs to work in WordPress 5.8 and 5.7 and use a theme JSON file, then there are two options. Either they will have to duplicate a lot of code, I mean, a huge amount of code. Yeah, exactly, nobody wants that. Or we could build some transitional packages that themes can then include. For example, we could have a theme JSON parser for older versions of WordPress that a theme can just, you know, put a file in there, include it, and it works. We could start building small packages like this. But first, we need to identify which parts need to work in older versions. Theme JSON is one of them.
I hope the idea is that we come to build things in such a way that we have to do very little work to build them, right? Be that in FSE block-based themes in the future or universal themes today. I think if we're doing things both ways in order to fulfill the classic and FSE needs, then we have failed ourselves. We should be able to do things in one way to support both of these environments while we transition. And if we've got just a whole lot of work to be able to support both of those positions, you might as well do one position or the other, and stop doing it this way and start doing it that way. But to stop doing it this way and start doing it that way, I think is the hard part. And if we have a gray area where we can all transition and all work in a not hard way, that's the win that we're aiming for.
Whether it's hard or not to actually drop everything and start building pure 100% full-site editing teams, it depends on what you're building. Are you building a one-page website? 30 minutes, you're done. You're only using block size, add your colors. Are you building a really advanced e-commerce site? No, it's going to take years before you can use 100% full-site editing team. But what I'm worried about with universal teams that try to do both, do we prevent team authors from actually moving to full-site editing because we are making it possible to stay behind and not move forward using the block editor?
Yeah, it's a case of if the training wheels are too good, why would you take the training wheels off, right? Yes. So they've got to be good, but they've also got to be kind of temporary. And I don't know, that's bad, but yeah, they've got to be like encouraging enough. And there is an education aspect to this because this is a mindset change. It's awesome, but it's a mindset change as well.
I
Like,
think
sorry.
I think we have to think very carefully about the human nature involved in that, in what you're proposing, because the whole "if it's not broken, don't fix it" thing is the classic motivator for doing anything new, right? So you have to present a value proposition which is so much far better than the current status quo to get people to do something new. It has to be really there, and you have to make them want it. But if it's asparagus, they also have to try it the first time, right? It tastes really great, but getting your kids to try asparagus is really hard because it looks weird. So it's very different than what they've had before. So the two things work, I think, in competition with each other. And sometimes you have to find a clever, right, a shiny way. And I've spent a lot of hours over the past few weeks thinking, like, what is the shiny way of presenting something that is just so very new to a lot of people in the WordPress community? So that's my thought on that, is how do we A, get them to try the asparagus, and B, convince them that it's so good they must have it at the same time.
I mean, the low-hanging fruit is the theme JSON and global styles. Someone been able to do that and never, I'm not going to say never, but rarely having to use custom CSS, or that becoming a lesser thing that you almost have to do to every WordPress site to customize it or do anything. That becoming a lesser thing is huge for people. So I think that's a big thing that can't be discounted. So that's a huge aspect of this. That's a huge asparagus taster. I'm not going to run with this because it's just going
to. Sorry about the asparagus. It's the only thing I can think of. But
well, and maybe that's the asparagus casserole where you don't really see much asparagus.
We need to stop
your
the
kids
asparagus.
I want to maybe be inclusive and know that the metaphor might be breaking down a little bit for, especially for non-native English speakers. A strange one.
One thing I think that's useful to think about with block themes is that, sorry, not block themes, universal themes, is the way that I think of them is that they're block themes, but they're just block themes which have got a few things added to them so that they will work in 5.8. So it's sort of just adding a little bit of a wrapper around a normal block theme, which just enables you to use them before WordPress kind of catches up. And so what I would expect is then once we get to 5.9, in the site editor is launched, assuming it goes into 5.9, or whenever it does eventually come, whether it's 5.9 or 5.10 or whenever, at that point, because your WordPress installation is ready for it, the theme now works in like a normal block theme. And all that kind of extra stuff that was there, wrapping the block theme up to make it work classic, is either you can remove it or it just is there but it's not used. So that the upgrade path, or the taking the training wheels off, or whatever you want to think about it, is sort of built into the upgrade path of WordPress. So I don't see it so much as this is like something which might stop people from using the site editor. It's in my head, it's the other way around. It's a way of getting people ready for the site editor now, so that when that comes, they're already kind of set up to succeed with it.
I love how opposite that was to what I thought entering this meeting. So I just put something in the chat to just say that I entered this meeting thinking the exact converse of what you just said. That I was coming expecting, how can I stay in my traditional PHP theme setup? Because I don't think we're ready yet to move, full on e-commerce, super complicated custom setups into a fully, I don't know, maybe we are. So I would love to hear that we are, but if we're not, then maybe the same thing exists in the converse bin? I don't know.
I think there's opportunity to take some of that low-hanging fruit into a classic theme and not go full universal, and to bring some of those aspects like the theme.json, the global styles, building block-based templates that are consumed in PHP templates, so that a lot of your work is done in ways that you will be doing in the future, but you're not all in on it, and so you're able to work in a classic environment using new tools in a way that helps you be comfortable using those new tools. And at some point, that transition becomes easier because you've eaten the asparagus casserole to further.
Yeah, no, we were talking about if universal themes were gonna be a hindrance. So, if people were gonna stick to that instead of going full block based and just build block themes, like if someone decides to go the universal route and start using these tools, it's because they want to use the new things that WordPress is gonna have beyond 5.8. So that means the person that's trying to build the themes using those tools already wants to embrace those new tools. So I don't think their mindset is on staying in the old way of doing things, because they can stay doing classic themes forever. Like their themes can be classic forever. No one's gonna say you can't do classic themes. As far as I know, classic themes are gonna still be working. So if someone wants to use universal themes because they want to start using blocks right now on their themes, because they want to start using theme.json on their themes now, it means they have this mindset of preparing their themes for the future. So I think in any way that they use them, it's gonna be an improvement, and it's gonna be like embracing that those new tools that Gutenberg is gonna bring to WordPress.
I'm a bit confused about this timeline. If this is supposed to be happening for WordPress 5.8, what is it that's going to be delivered that enables people to do this?
I think the big change in 5.8 is the introduction of a handful of full site editing blocks, like the query block, a number of blocks that are used to render parts of a site that would traditionally be only handled by a theme.
Title block.
Or a shortcode.
And theme.json?
And theme.json.
And how does theme.json get delivered when it's currently part of the site editor?
You can still use theme.json on your theme. It's just not the user won't be able to see. Yeah, but the theme still has all the benefits, and you can remove a lot of CSS using that.
Well, theme.json has to be significantly improved in terms of the loading up of it. If anyone makes a minor mistake in theme.json.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. This will bring you this a lot of work.
One concept I like to preach, and I know many people don't agree, but I think there's a big difference between the building of the theme and the editing of the theme. And tying block-based themes to the full site editor, my mistake, made things more confusing. There's a way to build themes, and they could render, and a user can use them without the full site editor. And those tools include theme.json and global styles and block-based and new blocks that are available to use. And you can build a theme using those tools without the full site editor. And there are things to overcome in order to do that fully. But I think that that's the space that is important to overcome or to fill right now.
I think something to work on, and it's come up quite a few times in the chat, and was mentioned here, is the tools and iterations. Talking about like the new stuff, but if the JSON needs some work to be more robust, that's a big thing here. If that's one of the big features, getting that as sound as it can be, or as robust as possible, really helps. Tools to do that, and education, and really helping with some of those conflicts, because the easier these things are to be able to use, yes, you've got to be motivated to use it, but we honestly want more people to be motivated to use it. Some people need a little bit more motivation sometimes, and through education and through the tools being easier, I think that happens. So really just soothing those edges is really, really, really important.
But we do need team modders and site creators to actually test and stress test and bend and pull and pinch on the team JSON, because we're at what is supposed to be a stable format right now, version 1. It's not great. There are still bugs. We found some this morning, but we need more people to test and try. And also, of course, find what's missing for you to be able to create a great site. If we need new block controls, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a user-facing control. Doesn't need to go into global styles just yet, since global styles user interface is not ready. But if the team needs it, I mean, we should open an issue and we should discuss it, and then we should work on it. But again, it might not move forward as fast if we're only like 5 or 6 people testing.
Can I ask specifically about the customizer? I know that the widget customizer block widget thing, sorry for not knowing the technical term, if it's been decided yet, isn't coming in 5.8, but I think the customizer is useful for a pathway to bridge. And I came here to this meeting to hopefully understand better how the customizer is going to play a role in getting us from where we are now to where we're going.
It's one of the biggest questions, I think, in my opinion. That's huge, yeah.
So I'm not the only one with the question, and we're not sure what the answer is yet.
I think all of us here have that question. Yeah.
So it's funny because I set out to create a full site editing experience with the tools I had at the time, which was a PHP theme. And I relied on the customizer to do things that I believe I can do, I hope, with global styles and theme.json once I start to experiment with that. And I was trying to study up in advance of this meeting. I understand from what I read that some of those things are still going to rely on the customizer. Is that an accurate understanding of what I read?
Who's going to answer that? I mean, right now, there's a very clear line between you use the customizer or you use the full site editing experience. And there's things that you can do in one that you can't do in the other. And so we don't have feature parity between the two. And so to say that a theme is universal, to me, seems to say that you can do the same things in both of these environments. And that's simply not true right now. And so trying to find what that appropriate space is, what features should be paradized across, and how is an important part of how the full site editor is growing right now. It's clearly not done, and it will be worked on for years to come. Transitioning that is important. And I think that we have an opportunity to say, here are the things that we want to be able to do with these tools within the customizer. And we can do a lot, and how does that transition to the full site editing experience? I don't know what those answers are. And there's going to be lots of exploration to help us understand what that is for a long time to come, I think. But exploring it is important, I think. I don't know if that helps.
we've got about 5 minutes left, and we have a group of people here that I have many of whom I've just kind of recently coming into contact with. And on to Jason's point about exploration, obviously we're not going to solve all the questions and answer everything here, but if you are exploring any of this stuff, there's a repository, theme experiments. If someone wants to drop that in the channel, awesome, thank you, Carolina. And the contributions there, just ideas that you have, the more that we can be talking together about these things, I think the faster the progress will be. So I just wanted to have a quick call out for, even I'm telling myself first, like to be contributing more in that space so that we can all be learning from each other.
Well, we're having links. Is there a link to theme JSON testing so that we can kind of get that to people, so all the people that are here can jump in that as well?
What do you mean theme JSON testing?
So it was mentioned that needs testing to kind of go through. Is there some suggested testing? Is there some framework for doing that so that people can kind of get involved in that?
Building themes.
I think 2021 blocks is, so in the theme experiments repo, maybe if we can share all of the issues tagged with 2021 blocks, that would probably be the best way to, because, building a new theme from scratch is like a hard way to ask of someone to test. So 2021 blocks is, I think, our best bet for figuring out if that's working as we expect.
And I think exploring theme.json in the form that it's entering WordPress 5.8 is enormously important. I think having a foundational understanding of that layer of configuration of a theme, and how it exists today, and just how that works, how we can leverage it, it's just enormously important. Whether that's something that's typed out by hand, that's built by the full site editor and exported, or done by a generator, whatever, I think that there needs to be a community of people with a good foundational understanding of that structure configuration. There's also a generator. I'm going to see if I can find.
Oh, good call.
That's really helpful.
Seen some issues around. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I have the link here.
That just exploring that helped me just to understand, a while ago.
I don't know if it's up to date, but that's the link.
Yeah. Oh,
people
that's true.
I know people are working on updating that. Oh, okay, cool.
Thank you, Kel.
Kel being one of them.
Right.
I think that's, unless anyone had any burning thoughts, maybe a good place to bring this Hangout, wrap it up.
Carolina's updated the documentation for the how to build a start.
Yes.
Can you drop a link for that too?
I was trying to find it.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a pull request that it can be reviewed. The problem I have with it, I'm sorry, it's echoing, is that it's a bit long. It also repeats things that is already listed, for example, in the documentation for Team JSON. There are probably also typos, so anything you can spot, just add a comment on this issue.
Well, I think it's a good thing that it repeats things in theme JSON, because any example that's right is better than not having the example and having to try to work it out yourself. I'd particularly like to see how you might, for instance, style a table block. How do you position the fig? How do you style the fig caption, or can't you?
Yeah, these are things that are not in TT1 blocks, and that's why we need to stress test to actually try different things, because TT1 blocks does have a quite basic design.
I think the balance, especially for TT1 blocks, of how much are we trying to execute only with theme.json, and how much are we wanting to explore with CSS to make the design right. You know, knowing that some of that is going to be done in Gutenberg, in the block based in theme.json at some point. You know, so difficult line to walk.
And of course, there are known gaps where work has not even started. For example, responsiveness. Anyone who's tried to make a column block break where you want it instead of where Gutenberg wants it. Yeah, I see a lot of people smiling. So again, those are things that needs to be solved.
Not easy, but fulfilling. Hopefully worth it in the end. Make more lives easier and introduce hopefully more people into the wonderful world of WordPress. Okay, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I'm going to post recordings, and I'm saving this chat right now in Zoom, and the stickies link. So we have a recording of this conversation, and I think there's some good follow-ups out of this and ways to start participating. So thanks everyone.
Thank
More
you all.
to come.
Appreciate your time.
Really nice talking to everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff.
Bye.
Bye.